Hyperdimension Neptunia is a franchise which has a demographic, and I'm not it. I've played a few games in the series, and the primary appeal seems to be the squeaky, adorable voices, the wacky anime girl antics, and that's not really for me. But you know what is for me? Musou games, and Hyperdimension Neptunia just so happened to get its own, titled Action Unleashed. And honestly, Action Unleashed isn't all that bad at first blush. The combat is your usual affair, wherein you mix light and heavy attacks to perform flashy combos, but there are other mechanics in place to keep the game fresh. Not super fresh, but fresh enough. There are SP skills which allow you to perform super moves, each with their own utility, for example, or the roster of playable characters who all have distinctive playstyles. If you play as the two journalist characters, you'll find they focus on simplistic juggle combos. If you play as Neptune, you'll see her focus is combo variety. If you play as Ram, you'll find yourself mercilessly beating down enemies and sucking them in toward you like a ravenous tornado, only to suddenly become an incredibly overpowered shoot-'em-up protagonist when you transform. Wait, transform? Well, yeah. All of the characters are capable of entering a high-powered state when you fill their EXE gauge. This gauge is filled by demolishing enemies, naturally, and you'll spend most of the game impatiently waiting for it to fill, because when you do transform, everything just gets easier for you. You deal more damage, take less damage, and your combos grow longer. Sure, your EXE gauge naturally depletes over time in this state, but killing baddies keeps it in the green with ease. Speaking of those baddies, they're kinda underwhelming. Don't get me wrong, they can paste you fast in your depowered form, but their AI is severely lacking in eye, and after you understand the game's progression, you'll feel silly for ever being challenged in the first place. What is the progression then? Well, it basically goes like this. There are unlockable items that require some minor grinding. One of the unlockable items allows you to start every level with a full EXE gauge. After you obtain it, the game becomes pretty mindless. You'll be mowing down enemy hordes without breaking a sweat, and the game becomes busy work with little to stimulate the player. And unlike, say, Dynasty Warriors or its peers, there's no light strategy elements to stop you from completely zoning out while your brain melts to mush. Even within the standards of its own genre, Action Unleashed is repetitive and tedious. The game's Hail Mary is something called irregular quests, which are intended to function as puzzles. They change core mechanics or just ask you to do something weird, and while they're a welcome break from listless hack and slashing, they're incredibly superficial and offer little complexity. I don't want to be too mean, because it's obvious the game had a low budget and they're trying to stretch their assets as far as possible, but I found very little to love here.